Alex's heart urged his bay horse along the narrow trail, his gloved hands steady on the reins, his hat brim catching flecks of white. The world had grown quiet in that way it did before deep cold set in, when even the wind seemed to hold its breath. He had planned to reach the river bend before nightfall to check the line of fence that had been worrying him, but fate always found a way to intervene on the frontier. A sudden crack in the underbrush startled the horse, and Alex pulled it to a stop. Out of the scrub came a small figure, darting like a rabbit pursued by hounds. It was a girl, no older than 9, her bonnet askew, braids unraveling, face red with cold and panic. She stumbled onto the trail and nearly fell, then looked up at him with eyes too wide for such a young face. "Please, sir." Her voice was desperate. "You've got to come quick. Mama, she's hurt bad." Alex swung down from the saddle without hesitation. The urgency in the child's tone carved into him sharper than any knife. He knelt, bringing himself eye level with her, and laid a steady hand on her shoulder. "Where is she?" the girl pointed, her arm trembling toward a collapsed barn that leaned like a broken rib against the slope beyond the trees. Smoke no longer rose from its chimney. No sounds of livestock came from the pen beside it. Just stillness, as though life itself had been driven out. "She can't move," the girl said, tears freezing on her cheeks. "They left her there." Alex didn't ask who they were. He read the truth in her shaking hands and in the cracked laces of her boots. Without another word, he lifted her onto his horse and took the reins in one hand, striding quickly toward the broken structure. The barn door sagged from rusted hinges, groaning when he pushed it open. Inside, the air reeked of mildew, blood, and old hay turned sour. Light leaked through gaps in the roof, striping the dirt floor. Against the far wall lay a woman. She was thin, almost spectral, her dress torn and muddied, her scalp raw and bare where hair had been cruelly shorn away. Purple bruises bloomed across her cheekbones, her lips split and caked with dried blood. She shivered despite the threadbare blanket half draped over her. Still, she tried to raise herself when Alex stepped forward as if instinct demanded she meet intrusion with defiance. Her voice rasped, "Take my girl away." The child slid from the horse's back and rushed to her, clutching her mother's hand with a sob. Alex crouched near them, feeling the weight of the cold air pressing against his lungs. The woman's eyes, dulled by pain, still carried a spark, a pride that even brutality had not managed to extinguish. "You'll freeze to death if you stay here," Alex said. His words were calm, low, but they filled the hollowed space with certainty. She flinched when he reached for her, though she lacked strength to resist. The girl looked between them, pleading silently. Alex gathered the woman in his arms with careful steadiness, lifting her as though she were both fragile glass and sacred burden. Her breath caught a mixture of pain and humiliation, but she did not protest further. The child clung to his coat as he carried her mother outside. Snow swirled harder now, coating the abandoned wagon that lay tipped on its side near the barn. Traces of rope dangled from it, ugly reminders of how she had been discarded like cargo unfit for keeping. Alex's jaw hardened. He had seen cruelty on the frontier. Neighbors turned savage when land or pride was at stake. But there was something in this act that went beyond mere harshness. To shear a woman bald and leave her to die was a violence that spoke of spite, not survival. He set her gently in the wagon bed he had brought, layering his own heavy coat over her shoulders. The girl nestled against her mother's side, eyes shut tight as if shutting out the memory of what had been done. Alex took the reins once more, climbing onto the driver's seat. The trail ahead wounded through a valley already filling with white. Every hoofbeat thudded it into snow, muffled and heavy. Alex kept his gaze sharp, scanning for riders, though the storm concealed all but the nearest trees. He could feel the woman's trembling through the wood of the wagon, each shudder echoing the truth of her suffering. Behind him, her voice, ragged but determined, broke the quiet. "Stranger, you'll bring trouble on yourself." Alex didn't turn. His breath rose like smoke into the air. A man who rides past trouble without stopping ain't worth much. No answer came, but he felt her gaze, heavy with disbelief, then softening into silence. They traveled until the horizon swallowed the barn completely. The wind picked up, carrying with it the smell of pine and the bite of ice. The girl fell asleep against her mother. Exhaustion pulling her under. Alex tightened the blankets around them, one eye always on the shifting gray sky. As they crossed a ridge, he caught sight of a cluster of houses far off, smoke rising from chimneys. But the memory of the wagon abandoned in the snow told him enough. Townsfolk had chosen not to intervene. Rejection had been her only companion until now. The horse snorted, laboring against the cold. Alex guided them into a narrow hollow where fir trees broke the wind. The snow gathered deeper, catching on the brim of his boots and the wagon boards. He stopped just long enough to pour water for the horse and check the woman's pulse. Her eyes fluttered open. Hazel flecked with gold, dulled by fever yet watchful. She tried to lift a hand to cover her scalp, but Alex gently caught her wrist. "Don't," he said softly. "Ain't nothing to be ashamed of." Her lips parted, but no words came. Tears welled and froze before they could fall. He released her hand and adjusted the blanket once more. His silence spoke more than pity ever could. Night threatened early in those October hills. The wind roared louder, rattling branches, and the wagon wheels crunched over hidden stones. Alex drove on, each mile a test of endurance. He could feel the choice pressing against him like the weight of the storm. He had taken them in, and now the world would not easily forgive it. Still he rode when the ridge opened to reveal the river valley. Snow swept across the water in veils. The cabin he called home stood dark against the pale land, a squat silhouette of pine logs and stone chimney. Relief slid through him, though his face betrayed nothing. He guided the horse down the final slope, each step careful on ice, slick ground. At the cabin, he carried the woman inside, her body light yet unwieldy in her weakness. The girl stumbled after them, clutching the hem of his coat. The interior smelled of pine pitch and smoke. He laid the woman near the hearth, striking flint to coax flames from kindling. Fire caught quickly, throwing orange light across her hollowed cheeks, and the lines of old pain etched deep despite her youth. The girl huddled close, warming her fingers, whispering to her mother that all would be well. Alex set broth to heat, the aroma of salted meat and onion filling the room. He worked with efficient quiet as if silence itself could shield them. When he finally met the woman's eyes again, she whispered through cracked lips. "Why?" The question hung between them, fragile as icicles. Alex stirred the fire, its sparks rising like stars. "Because no one else did." The storm clawed at the shutters. A beast of ice and wind that promised more nights of hardship. But inside the small cabin, warmth spread. Not safety, not yet, but a reprieve carved out against the world's cruelty. The girl, now dozing against her mother, murmured in sleep. The woman touched her child's hair with trembling fingers, then looked back at Alex. Something unspoken passed, not trust but the beginning of it, a thread thin as breath. Outside the wind howled, and from far across the valley, faint as a shadow, came the echo of hoofbeats. The cabin groaned against the wind, its logs creaking as if the storm outside sought to pry them apart. Alex stoked the fire higher, feeding its split pine until the hearth glowed red and the shadows retreated to the corners of the room. The warmth filled the space with a soft hum, a barrier against a white roar beyond the shutters. He moved with the same quiet precision he had shown in carrying the woman here, as though every action must be performed with care. Nothing wasted, nothing loud. The girl sat cross-legged near the hearth, her cheeks flushed by heat, eyes half closed from exhaustion, yet still alert enough to watch over her mother. Ruth, he had not heard her name yet, but he would learn it soon enough, rested on a cot Alex had dragged close to the fire. She lay curled under wool blankets, her breath uneven, but steadier than when he had first found her. Every so